Hey guys, nice to have you on today. So, how did Greywood's plot all come together?
Greywood's plot was sort of Dan and I really wanted to actually I really wanted to make a feature film. Like that was like my big bucket list item to do, and I knew I wanted to make it. So for my 31st birthday, I had prepared to go out, and Dan, me, Strauss, and Keith were gonna go film this movie. And I'd written out note cards and stuff like that, and just kind of went in with a scriptment and not a full idea. But they followed me into the woods, and we shot and kind of failed miserably. Came back and decided we should really write a script, and then Dan and I sat down and wrote it, and we eventually came out with a movie.
Yeah, and Dan, you worked with Joss before on The Good Exorcist. So, how did you and Joss get to know each other? How did that relationship kind of evolve to what it is today?
Yeah, so I met Josh. We met in kindergarten. So we've known each other a long time. And our buddy Keith as well. Josh has known him since basically the day they were born. So we've been making, homemade movies since we were kids. And, over the years that's progressed. We did music for a while. We were in bands together, Josh and I. And then when YouTube kind of came around, we did some like comedy sketch routine stuff. And then Josh went to school for animation, and I helped him with like voices and stuff. And I'd send him feedback. And then, yeah, with the feature film, we sort of fell into it with the whole Rebel Without a Crew series. And, he asked if I would act in it because we didn't know what to expect from the experience. So I'm like, sure, let's do it.
Right. And Joss, you were on my podcast before I was doing infamous infamous interviews on YouTube. So, and we talked about it before in the past that you kind of worked on Kevin Smith's Tusk before you did Greywood's plot. And so, and I think you told me that had a little bit of inspiration to do to see if you could do a creature feature a little bit better than Kevin, or if you could do your own. So I'm curious if you can kind of tell that story again, if you don't mind.
No, yeah, totally. I always wanted to do. I was a huge fan of movies like Island of Dr. Moreau, The Fly. I love this concept. I mean, even dating back to, the Metamorphosis, reading that in high school, like I've always loved this concept of man becoming beast. Um, and then I worked on Tusk, and it wasn't necessarily that I thought I could do it better, but I knew that I had a different story to tell, and I knew that I had always wanted to do that. So seeing that Kevin could do something like that, I was just like, well, what's my take on this sort of friendship that goes awry? And I thought that that was sort of a missed opportunity in Tusk, the relationship between them, and I really wanted to see what I could do with that. And but it really all came from me wanting to make a movie where Dan played a Dr. Frankenstein like character. I always loved the doctor who is like behind everything and is sort of like he wants to be famous, but the reality is he's using someone else or something else to actually get there. So making Greywood sort of this like that's what I wanted to tell the story of, is like, who is this Dr. Frankenstein? Um and I that's really where it came from. So I think Kevin was the impetus to sort of go like, you know what, I can do that. I don't care if
Right.
he has to. I think Tusk cost like $5 million or something like that. That was his budget. I was like, if he's gonna spend $5 million on this, we can make it for 2 grand and give it a shot and see what happens.
Right. And, with this being a do it yourself kind of budget, like you just mentioned, 2 grand, a lot of times the disconnect on movies like this is are they move kind of slow, right? Like you don't mean to. It's just like the editing process and the production value. They kind of you can tell like it was made for that. But with Greywoods, you can't really tell that it was made for just 2K. So was that something you wanted to emphasize too on the character study and the you know constructing this of the film altogether? Did you just want to what you can do this for a do it yourself budget and it can act like a theatrical release?
Yeah, I'll let Dan speak to this a little bit as far as like the characters go, but as far as like this, like wanting it to move at a solid pace, I specifically, when I start out, I do note cards and I lay out 40 note cards because I know if I have 40 scenes in the movie, it's not going to be slow and prodding and boring. I know that if each one of those scenes, I can write something on it that says like, I need a monster in this scene. Then I can like visually look at it and be like, this chunk is going to be boring because this is just talking, 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 talking. We need something to happen in here. So that's sort of been my method of not falling into the trope of, you know, indie film that's just like we're filling time with dialogue and nothing is happening and we're kind of just going in circles because you see that happen a lot.
Right. It's almost like mumblecore to a fault with independent films a lot now, right?
Right, totally.
Yeah, and that's kind of actually what we started with this film too, and we just realized it just made more sense for us to make something structured, especially for the story we wanted to tell and these characters we wanted to explore. It just made more sense to go a more conventional storytelling route. And yeah, that's just credit to Josh. I mean, going to school for animation, I think he's just a very visual storyteller, and he knows how to move the camera consistently without it, without ever feeling too slow or too bored.
Yeah, I think you can still see the bones of that mumblecore mentality we had going into it. Like through the first 30 minutes of the movie, you can kind of feel those moments where you're like, is this going to be just like a slow prodding thing? And I think, I've heard people say like, we've had some reviews where they're like, I would have shaved off 10 minutes or I would have shaved off 15 minutes. But what they don't kind of understand is I don't think it packs the punch if we do shave off, because at the last 45 minutes, you can't really shave off anything or you lose story elements. And if we shave anything off of the first 45 minutes, you really don't earn that second chunk of the movie.
Yeah.
Right. It's always that thing, like if you save off 10 minutes from the beginning, you don't get the character background, or you can't get to this point or the third final act without, that little bit of dialogue to really explain it.
Right. And with these characters, it's like you kind of have to be a little bored to understand what their lives are. You got to feel what they're feeling. And I hope I hope when people watch it, even the people who say that or the people, other people who maybe read that review, they understand like that the boring element of it really isn't. We're still visually doing things. As boring as a moment may be, like we're sitting by the campfire, there's still like fun things happening around us. It's funny because like I've talked to people where I'm like, would you shave off any time? And they were like, yeah, maybe I'd shave off like 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'd be like, what would you shave off? And they try to like think through it. And they're like, maybe nothing. I don't really know.
Your end credits are too long.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. That 15 seconds of screaming is just too much.
And Josh, I think I told you this in a previous interview we did with my old podcast, is I really enjoyed that Alkaline Trio reference that you had with your mom on the couch.
We definitely were trying to put in some fun little references and stuff like that throughout the whole thing. And it's fun when people notice one, because Keith also has that line where he says, I hate warm beer. It makes me puke, which is for me, it was a reference to Blue Velvet, because that's what he says in Blue Velvet. But I've had other people take that line and be like, are you referencing this song? Because apparently other bands have taken that song and like that, or taken those words and put it as a song title before. And like there's like 3 bands that have done it. And so people sometimes think I'm referencing that when I was really referencing Blue Velvet a little bit.
And how did that scene come together? Because that was like your real mom in that, and you got her to say that line about spitting out razor blades. So that had to be really fun for her to say.
The whole thing was fun, because Dan and I directed my mom in that scene together. Daniel came over when my mom came over, and we were just kind of like spent the whole time messing with her. And that was the whole reason for putting my mom. That whole scene I wrote as way to make my mom have to say terrible things on camera, and I could get away with it because I thought that would be a lot of fun. I just thought it would be a goofy thing. Having her say, like, basically she wishes she had never had me. I just thought that'd be hilarious. But it's funny because the one thing she wouldn't say was goddamn. I had wrote goddamn into the script for her to say like 3 times, and she would not, absolutely would not say it. And I thought that was pretty hilarious.
So that's the one thing she would not say at all.
The one place her
That's the
Catholic
line.
guilt would not let her go.
Yeah, Kim's a saint.
So, you guys, what were some of the most difficult scenes that you had to film in Greywood's plot with this being a $2,000 budget? I'm sure there was some kind of issues along the way with some costume design or something in the film. So, what were some of the hardest experiences that you had with Greywood plot?
You know what's funny is I've worked on a few bigger budget movies, and they have just the same issues, and it doesn't matter what you're doing in all filmmaking. There's always things fall. In fact, the more people you get and the bigger budget you get, it seems like the more challenging things can become from time to time. But I was just going to throw out the story because I don't think we've talked about this on anything. But the scene at the very end of the movie, it's sort of my take on American Gothic, where you see the two characters sitting next to each other in a very flat shot with a lake in the background. It's hard to tell in the actual shot itself, but it is like a biting, like -5 degrees outside, and it is like sleety, or like maybe it was like 25 because it was like a weird too cold to be out there, but not too cold to be out there. And it was like kind of almost raining, but the rain was freezing and turning to sleet. So I set up the camera in my dog mask thing and what I'm wearing, and I run down, roll camera, and Daniel's just being like pelted from behind by sleet. And we're filming it, and the camera's like slowly falling over in the snow and from the wind. And so then I'm getting up and running back, and there's Daniel just like freezing with the tips of his ears starting to bleed from the sleet. And it was just
like you had kind of like icicles coming down from your ears.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm not realizing that it's that bad because I'm in a full robe with the cowl on. Like I'm just hearing it kind of patting against my skull, but I'm like kind of warm from that, having the mask on. And then I look over at Daniel and he's like, how much longer? But we got through it. Again, like that's the beauty of it being a $2,000 independent movie. Is on any other film shoot, they probably would have been like, nah, it's too cold. We can't do this. Like, you guys got to wait it out. I think it looks better because of the pain that we kind of had to go through. You could kind of see it in us.
Yeah, I feel bad for that question because, you assume that we had these huge, hurdles to overcome, but really we were fortunate enough that, we didn't have a timeline. Our biggest thing was definitely more mental. We spent a long time piecemealing this movie together. We would have to do it on weekends and late nights, and it was kind of just the mental game of persevering and like believing in the film enough to finish it, rather than we only have 17 days consecutively and everything falls apart. We were blessed to have like that lax casual atmosphere while we were filming, but it was a matter of like getting to the finish line ultimately.
And there's also that torture of, is this going to be good enough? Are we going to take it a level above what, let's be honest, there's a lot of really great no budget independent movies out there, but there's a lot of trash too. And we really we wanted to at least fall somewhere in between the two. And so you're constantly going like, is this good enough? Like, are we doing good enough? Take it one more time, because if what we have isn't good enough, maybe we can get it in the next take. And there were plenty of times where I was just like pushing us way too far, especially Keith. I'd make Keith do takes over and over and over because he's not an actor, and I was nervous about his performance. And there were moments where I'd make him do it like 30 times, then I'd look back at the footage and I'd be like, oh, he got it on the first try. I was a jerk.
Yeah. And just like knowing when you're done. I mean, we don't have a studio backing us, or we don't have a deadline. So, we could have spent another 2 years, futzing around and like messing with it. But you really have to like trust, each other, and trust that the movie's done and it's ready. And like we've done the best we can with what we had, and it's ready to go, and we don't have to do any more takes, we don't have to do any more visual effects. Like this is the piece of art that we want to put out there.
Right. And now what's next for Greywood's plot? Because I think you guys got distribution on this, right?
We did. September 16th through Terror Films. It will be releasing on all digital platforms. So you can pick it up on Vudu or Amazon or iTunes or whatever your preferred watch venue is. And then we're hoping to do some physical releases in the future. But yeah, we're really excited. That is the next move, is to get it out there and actually get people seeing it beyond just the film festivals. The film festival circuit was great. It was very long with COVID. I feel like we've been doing film festivals for, I mean, it's literally been almost, I mean, it's been a year and a half at this point since our first film festival.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're finally ready to get it out there and see what, it's one thing to have like film critics see it and have, you know, the people who go to film festivals and the people sitting in a theater together. But I'm really excited to see what the people who are just sitting at home watching it think, and what the people who stumble onto it because a friend says, hey man, there's this messed up movie you can get on Vudu, and they hop on and watch it, because then you're going to get those visceral responses of like, that was the worst, or that was the best. And I can't wait to hear what people think. I just hope we're polarizing. I hope there aren't a whole lot of like, it was okays, because that is definitely not what we set out to do.
Yeah.
Right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me today, and hope you have a good day and a good weekend ahead.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, thanks for having us, sir.